This is maybe a little more diplomatic than that, but yeah.
You know, you really has come down. You thought, you're gonna come over here, it's like, harass you a little bit, yeah. She was thinking of it.
Welcome, everyone. We appreciate you being here tonight for this listening session. We are going to begin. First, I'd ask you to silence your cell phones, please. That way we won't have those interruptions. And then we would stand and do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Once more, I'll give my pitch that if you have a hard time hearing, move closer to the front. It can be difficult to hear in the back of the room. We will project as best we can. I'm Dee Malter. I'm the current board chair of the Waseca County Board, and we are here tonight to listen and to learn. We know that there are a lot of feelings and opinions on the topic of shotgun only versus rifle. And I'm pretty confident when I say I'm sure that all my fellow commissioners have heard from constituents, as have I, who have called or emailed or talked to us on a street corner about thoughts and feelings about the recent change that the legislature made to deer hunting. And so tonight is an open forum where we listen to your thoughts on this and learn together. You are certainly all aware that, I'm going to preface with this. This board is not making any decisions tonight. We are not making any decisions tonight, no possible decisions. We are listening and learning. It's important too, and I'm sure you understand that any possible decision we would make on this is never just based on what we hear from constituents. Of course, that's a major thing for us. We want to hear what you think, but we also try to look far and wide for information and for understanding and for context that comes from what other people know, what other counties have experienced or are going through. And you can bet that all the counties around us are having similar conversations to what we're having. So in the context of making sure that we're listening and learning, we have asked staff to put some information together for us too, that we're going to share tonight. Michael has not shared this with the board ahead of time, that we're all going to hear together. Just some things that he has researched to help us if we do make a decision on this, and it might help form our conversation tonight. And then really the rest of the time and the bulk of the time is going to be hearing from you all. So that's the agenda for tonight, and I would begin here by turning it over to Michael and share with us what you have discovered, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair and Commissioners and folks for joining us. Always happy to present on these non-contentious topics like this. But I'll just start by diving into a little bit of the history of where we are. Clearly, you know a little bit about this, or you wouldn't be here, and curious to hear some more. This is a very old law, and a law that changed this last legislative session. And partially what staff are seeking to impart in this communication or in this data is dispelling a couple of things, not really trying to convey or change an opinion, not trying to lessen a feeling or conclusion you have already come to, but simply provide some data. So there is an original thought in this, meaning that we are really just finding sources, citing sources, many of which I'm sure you already have seen and are already aware of. So I don't want to spend a ton of time and monopolize this time this evening, but it's an old law. That's a law that was changed, but it was implemented originally as a means of population control, herd management, if you will. Time the technology was substantially different than it is today. Last year that changed in terms of legislation that was passed, and it was a very open-ended piece of legislation, meaning that every individual county has the opportunity to implement their own ordinance that would effectively model what the law has been since 1942 when it was first implemented. And that's just part of our understanding right now is that technically we're in 2026. Technically, we are already under a rifle hunting designation. This board or any board in the state of Minnesota does not have to act at all, and not implementing an ordinance simply acknowledges and accepts the fact that the law has changed and operates under that same designation. Something that has recently changed was this date of decision that we have to notify the DNR by. Probably a couple of commissioners haven't heard this one yet because I just discovered it last night. But we had been operating under the assumption, as was the entire state, by the DNR needed to be notified by March 1st in order for their under guidance manual to be updated appropriately with enough lead time for publication distribution. They backed that up to May 5th because there was some discrepancy with how staff were communicating that date internally. Just a quick picture, snapshot of what that shotgun zone looks like now. Again, something you're likely familiar with. I'll just spend a couple of moments on some frequently asked questions that have been posed, whether to us or the DNR. One, did the DNR push for this elimination? And really, no. This was taken up by several advocacy groups that worked with legislative delegates to ultimately jacket a bill and get that bill approved in the last legislative session. The DNR did and still has taken a neutral position on this. We have recently, as staff, sought their formal opinion, their willingness to come and present. I'm sure they have been inundated with such requests. That being said, they have provided some level of guidance or answers to some of these frequently asked questions on their website and other social media platforms. So the thing that you will see recurring throughout their opinion is that they don't want a patchwork solution. They don't want a hybrid solution. They've been adamant that counties will either be all in or all out in terms of letting the legislation lapse as it has, or implementing an ordinance that models what it was. So we won't look at a patchwork solution because the DNR has very specifically said we won't honor that or enforce it. Does the DNR have concerns about the elimination of shotgun zone? And we're coming from a perspective of safety here as the answer. DNR does not have concerns about the elimination of shotgun zone as it pertains to safety and wildlife management perspective. Whatever type of firearm you use, it's up to hunters to always prioritize safety. From a wildlife management perspective, the DNR focuses on the number of animals harvested, not the type of firearm or weapon used to harvest them. And this speaks again to that hybrid solution as some perhaps a view that I know that we have certainly heard within this community as a possible alternative in months past. Meyer dispelled that notion in terms of, as I just described it, either we're in or we're out as it pertains to shotgun only zones. There are a number of resources out there. Again, in some cases, I'm not going to be telling you anything you don't know or haven't seen. I know I've seen some recent commentary about this report that the state of Pennsylvania looked at through their legislative process. We'll take a couple of minutes to dive into that. That's actually something that this board saw last August and started talking through several months ago. There's been a vast amount of education effort from this board standpoint. So though they haven't seen this presentation specifically, they aren't going to be surprised by any of the information or the data therein. They've had countless conversations, not with just constituents, but with other commissioners in other counties, with delegates and officials therein. This is what this process looks like. This is the report that the state of Pennsylvania, the legislative task force essentially commissioned as a result of legislation that was passed or was proposed to be passed. So conducted pursuant to the House of Resolution 61 of 2005. So they posed essentially the same question. What is the impact as it pertains to safety in comparing shotguns, muzzle loaders to centerfire rifles? So that specific request through that Legislative Budget and Finance Committee, as you can see there, commissioned a company called Mountaintop Technologies based in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. That's what that source is and just the cover page looks like. And just to very, very quickly surmise a almost 70-page study, really what it was looking at is exactly as the question posed. Is there a safety conversation here, one way or the other? And how does it compare? So I'm going to consolidate what they said, and you can certainly look at that more on a separate time. But they looked at various trajectories of the bullets being fired. They're comparing muzzle loaders, shotguns, and then a 30-06 in this particular instance. So they looked at first, what's the maximum range associated with abnormal behaviors and accidental acts? So shooting at a 35-degree firing elevation is not normal. So they essentially were dispelling, if we're going to maximize accidental fire rates, accidental trajectories, what's that maximum distance you can see? And on that screen, you have kind of muzzleloader, shotgun, and rifle from left to right. And the shotgun in this conversation being red. And that just kind of shows the maximum distance at that trajectory. They compared that then to a 0-degree firing elevation, which they represented as normal hunting behavior with no vertical aiming area. So assuming that you are in a position that is aiming in proximity to where a deer would be, and there is no hunting error going into that, they then calculated, and just to pause, there's a lot of other math that goes into this that we're not taking the time to park on here. Encourage you to look at it if you're interested. And then calculating distance traveled by the munition, as well as accounting for any ricochet that would happen at that 0-degree firing elevation. With that in mind, the view you see from that left to right analysis, it changes things. Shotgun then becomes the furthest distance traveled in that 0-degree firing elevation when you're accounting for the material that it ricochets off of final distance traveled. To use their words, and this comes directly verbatim out of the report, discharging the exam firearm ammunition combination with 10 degrees, and they showed 10 degrees and 5 degrees in the synopsis as well. And ultimately going down to 0 degrees, and then looking at shotguns firing modern sabeted slugs have a larger danger area than 30-06 rifle when the angle of elevation is approximately level or 0 degrees. Hence, given this firing condition, the shotgun is riskier than the rifle. Again, not my interpretation, exactly what came out of that legislative finding. In other words, the typical hunter discharging a 12-gauge shotgun fitted with a rifle barrel, firing a 50 caliber sabeted modern high-velocity ammunition at deer on level terrain is riskier than a hunter firing a 30-06 with a 150 grain expanding bullet at the same deer. Muzzle loader consistently through all of those scenarios was proved to have a less risk in all firing conditions. Tons of sources and source material that go into that. Again, encourage you to utilize that. Happy to share it with you if that's helpful. I then looked at something more recently, actually just a couple of weeks ago in its publication, which is a site just called ammo.com. Not really any guesses as to what that pertains to, obviously. But it was a study that looked at hunting accident statistics, specifically 2025. and actually went all the way back to 2020 and looking at some of those causes and trends per year. These are all the sources that went into that analysis. All of those are just hyperlinked to the various places that they are published and embedded. Looking at just some highlights, this is the kind of high level overview of what this study dove into. 80% of hunting accidents are attributed to human error. That's very similar to what you saw with the DNR statement at the beginning of this presentation. You can't ever remove the humanness from this equation. 80% attributed to human error. Hunters' failure to properly identify a target is the leading cause of firearm hunting related accidents at 37%. There are between 3,000 and 4,000 reported injuries to tree stands each year. You'll see very much in this data that the most dangerous thing about deer hunting is tree stands, repeatedly. It is not any firearm of any kind. 9% of reported accidents in 2001 were fatal. Again, they were going back to 2000 and 2001 to use a baseline as they move forward. And fairly even in terms of firearm-related hunting accidents, whether that be rifle or shotgun. Just some graphics, and I'm not going to go through all of these verbatim. But again, you can certainly peruse this some more as you go. Their methodology and definitions in determining this study as a whole, utilizing the International Hunter Education Association as well for some of the source data. As you can read on the screen, I don't have to read it all verbatim for you, but ultimately the article contains hunting accident statistics from a variety of sources worldwide. So they took the synopsis of what's happening in the US. They then expanded that to several other places. They took a large sample size in Germany as example, and just compared, basically trying to prove the fact is our data skewed or not. And it wasn't, it was consistent. In terms of the accident statistics in 2025, and again, causes and trends over the years, hunting accidents compared to the actual firearm related accidents, you can see are about 1 out of 4 firearms. The rest are tree stands, and a small synopsis of other as well. When you drill down on just those firearm, the gun-related hunting accidents, they break down further over a much larger time period as well. Drilling down on a little bit more of tree stand specific injuries and deaths as well over that time period. So how do hunting injury rates compare? They encapsulated this whole study by then it was a hobby-based study, right? Their whole shtick was essentially saying that hunting is the second safest hobby that somebody can have. And they were proving that concept by comparing it to a significant amount of other hobbies that we'll look at in this next screen. But they looked at it in groups of 100,000 as well. And as you can see through data through the National Shooting Sports Foundation, they looked at tackle football, they looked at skateboarding, they even looked at billiards, and wasn't aware that there were that many billiards injuries. But regardless, that's one of the sample size they looked at. And as you can see, hunting with firearms is just slightly less safe than billiards is. Yeah, that was an odd one. But proof and concepts, again, not my study, but as they were alleging and trying to prove out that ultimately hunting as it compares to hobbies as a whole is a relatively safe venture. So no shortage of opinions. As Commissioner Malter rightly stated, we've heard a lot, and that's good, right? But like everything, as you well know, there is not unanimous conclusion. We'll have one conversation about something completely different than the next person, and both people may be right in a sense, because as I stated before, the goal of this is not to invalidate thought, belief, or feeling. Your feelings are your own, your thoughts are your own. All we have really to look at is data, and we strive to have a data-driven process and a data-driven approach. So that is ultimately what we look for. That being said, there has been some community feedback. We've heard from some of our local individuals that participate in deer hunter associations. We've received some letters. The commissioners have received some letters and communication, possibly from some of you folks as well. I know that's going to be a little small, but again, you can have a copy of the presentation if you'd like. Mr. Guzzi is a property owner in the county, but perhaps more relevant to this particular conversation is his 30+ years as a game warden in the state of Montana. He's done pretty much all there is to do as it pertains to deer hunting with all level and manner of firearms that exist. And utilizing that feedback ultimately to come back and state that I believe the repeal of the shotgun only law for deer hunting in southern Minnesota is a positive decision. As a landowner with deer habitat and a retired wildlife enforcement officer, I've been able to directly observe and been educated on many issues relevant to this law change. I won't read all of that line for line, but there are a lot of individuals within this community that have a lot of experience, more experience than me, that can lend opinion to this overall topic. So yeah, no desire to specifically change anyone's opinion, but all we really ultimately have to do in terms of laying the groundwork or framework of a decision for these individuals, should a decision be made, is relying on the vetted and data-driven processes that we have. With that, Madam Chair, I'll turn it back to you. Happy to answer any questions from a staff perspective. Otherwise, happy to listen to some folks.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael. We're going to spend the rest of our time hearing from you. What I'm going to ask is that you keep your comments as brief and coherent as possible, that you come up to the podium, tell us who you are and where you live, and then tell us what your thoughts are. We're not like making a list of how many people say this and how many people say that. We certainly want to know what all of you think, but if somebody has already said just what you're going to say, feel free to say, I agree with so-and-so, and call it good. We do want to be judicious with our time, but we also want to take the time we need so that people all feel like they're being heard. And so I would welcome anyone to the podium. Please limit any comments to just a couple minutes if you can, but anyone who's ready, come on up to the podium and tell us what's on your mind.
I got a meeting.
Then come on up.
I'm not here to. I'm just here. I want to watch the video and really hear everybody else's opinions. A couple of things that I want to talk about is.
Please introduce yourself.
Oh, sorry. I'm Theron Kruger. I live in Welton Township.
Thank you.
There's a couple of things I have questions on. Number one is you hear safety when it comes to shotgun rifle. Question is, do we have a safety issue? My feeling is no. The second question comes, are we threading needles or are we shooting accuracy with what we're doing? Because when you have a firearm, you got to know what your targets are. Couple other things too is when we look at other states that run a rifle versus shotgun, what time of year are they doing this? What part of the deer's life is it during? What are the farmers doing at that time? So all that comes into play. So, and the other thing is I feel we have smaller areas that we're hunting in our county versus some of the other counties with their terrain and their coverage. So I think we're hunting line fences, river bottoms. There aren't 1,000 acres of woods. So we're not hunting out in the main prairie areas. Some people have that, opportunity. Not everybody does. And then I like that too. What's back in this? Is it the DNR? I think you kind of come with that, Michael, saying it really isn't. There's just groups pushing some things here. So it's things that I want to bring up that attention to. I'm really interested in hearing everybody's opinion here. I like the opportunity to see if other people are changing it. Let's let them do it. Let's see how it goes. Don't have to jump on the bandwagon right away. So thank you.
Next. Welcome.
Hi, good evening, commissioners, Madam Chair. Tony Hanson, live here in town. Not sure if you're aware of the deer permit areas here, but we got 230, which is west of 13, and 232 is the one east of Highway 13. That's the two permit areas we kind of cover. I've hunted in both for the last 10 years. Has anybody looked at the deer harvest reports from the Minnesota DNR? They put these out every year. They do have preliminary numbers for 2025, but I pulled the last 10 years. I see back in 2016, we were about 539 taken in 230, 644 in 232. It kind of peaked in 2022 at 654 in 230 and 718 over in 232. And then it's been dropping the last few years, the harvest numbers with 549, the preliminary numbers for 2025 and 745 for the east side there in 232. But, looking at this, they've got the statewide licenses. They don't assign them to permit areas. It's because, you're not stuck in a permit area. But, the shocking thing is how fewer licenses are given out every year. Since 2013, we're down about 55,000 licenses. So we're losing about 5,500 a year. One thing that's changed that, a lot of people know, we went from a lottery to an either sex to two deer per bonus tag in this area now. So obviously the population is rising, and you can see that in the bonus tags. Back in 2013 there were 97,000. 2024 was 154,000, so that's an increase of 60,000 bonus permits. That means fewer hunters are taking more deer. And one of the other things that's a little disturbing is the youth licenses was 64,000, almost 65,000 in 2013. We're down to 54,600 in 2024. So there are fewer and fewer youth getting into hunting. The other thing is the Minnesota DNR has also done a population study. Don't know if you've looked at that yet, but the interesting part in that is since 2019, 232, we went from 1.9 deer per square mile to in 2024, we're at 3.9 deer per square mile. So we almost doubled in 4 years. 232 has went from 2.5 per square mile to 6.1 per square mile. So that's more than doubled. So, my biggest concern is we've got fewer hunters trying to control this population. Give us the tools to try and take care of this. When I was in college, I had to take an animal ethics class. One of the things we saw was in Cuyahoga Heights, New York. There are a lot of news stories on this back in 2012. Massive deer overpopulation because it's no hunting in city limits. 125 deer per square mile. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars for vets to come in and sterilize these deer to try and reduce the populations. Population still grew. They still had to pay professional bow hunters to come in and cull the herd. So, with increased deer population, you're going to have more cars hitting deer. If that's left unchecked and it just keeps growing, you might see car insurance premiums increase in Waseca County because it's a high risk area. The other thing with increased populations is spread of the chronic wasting disease. We're constantly watching that. And then the increased risk of transmission to humans. So I'm pro rifle here. It's more accurate, easier to make ethical shots, take longer shots. You got less recoil, so it's better for introducing it to younger hunters. They're more willing to do it. I still hate going in and zeroing my shotgun every fall. Kicks like a mule. So, but also allow senior hunters to continue hunting later because they don't have to deal with that recoil. It's not a silver bullet to control the population, but it's something we can use. We still need to look at bag limits, private land access, and season lengths. But I think this would be a step in the right direction. Thanks.
Next.
Andy Allman, I live in Janesville. I'm also for the rifle season. One reason would be is it still is gonna come down to the private landowners if they want to let the hunters on their property use the rifles. They can say, no, I think we'll just keep it with shotguns or archery or whatever. Another thing is every winter coyote hunters have been using centerfire rifles as far as I know forever. And to my knowledge, there hasn't been any issues with that. So I think if we can allow them to do it, that the deer hunters should as well. The last gentleman that talked about the introduction of the youth, that's very accurate. With the less recoil, you can get smaller rounds for the kids, get more kids out there. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Andy.
Evening, folks. Glenn Carlson, home farm is in Iosco Township and I live in Blooming Grove. I agree with what everyone is saying about the information, and I think what's important is enjoying the time out there in the woods. Back years ago, we hunted here with weekends. And that perceived pressure Saturday and Sunday to fill your tags forced us to drive running shots. As a competitive shooter, I learned that prone and supported positions were the most accurate, and the offhand shot was horrible. And it took a lot of practice to get better at doing that. If you have the opportunity as commissioners, please look at longer seasons. If we can match the Northern Zone 1 season of 18 days or so, that allows the hunters more time in the woods to enjoy it. More ethical shots because there's not a perceived pressure to drive those running shots and take that ethical shot. Regardless of the firearm that you use, the laws are the same. Safety, obviously, and taking those well-aimed shots and so on. So longer season, I think, would help, and folks would enjoy it more. And that way, we're not everybody being in the woods at the same time. In those condensed areas, as we talked about, the groves and river bottoms, it just allows folks to enjoy it more. I've hunted all over the country. I've had deer seasons 4 months. I've had deer seasons 2 days. 4 months is easier because I can go out when I want to and the conditions are right and I don't have pressure to do that. So if you have that opportunity to put input to match our seasons, because I'm not sure what our 26 deer season length will be. We also own land in Iosco County and often go up there, and it's different. You go up there and you relax, and some years we do well and other years we don't based on what we see, but it's nice to relax in the woods. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Good evening. My name is Chad Grosskreis and I live on the southern part of the county in Vivian Township. I've been a DNR certified firearm safety hunter education instructor for 15 years. And I'm going to approach this as a safety part of it. Anybody born after 1974 has to have that certification in order to buy a hunting license. Every year I get the same report that Michael put part of up there of the hunting related accidents in prior years. And the small piece of the pie that showed the firearms related were actually somebody either got hit or accidentally shot. The majority of that involves turkey hunting. Turkey hunting, as we know, we don't have Blaze Orange on it, so the lion's share of that. So the actual deer hunting incidence is low since they instituted the requirement for the Blaze Orange and Blaze Pig. We go a lot into depth of the safety part of it when we teach the classes, and we go through the distances that certain caliber rifles and shotguns travel. You approached it too with savage slugs, rifle barrels. Got shotgun slugs traveling darn near as far as 30-06, 30-30 rifle cartridges now. I am in support of
putting it up to rifles, I don't see an issue with it. I look at it on the safety fact, and if it helps, by all means, get younger generations back into the hunting, I'm all for it.
Okay.
Greg Gehring, Otisco Township. I just want to point out that even though that study was, showed good data, that it was also quite antiquated, being 20 years old. Slugs have come quite a bit further in that time, and black powder. Now there's muzzle loaders you can use that use smokeless powder that are good out to 700 yards, and that's, you know, a flat distance. So you point that up like that study shows, and lightens that way out. And then with the shotgun zone, you can also use pistols, which is what I primarily hunt with. And there is no caliber besides caliber restrictions besides being 9mm and above. So I could potentially use a 338 Lapua pistol, which, if you know, that's a military sniper caliber. But I can't use a 30-30, which came out 150 years ago, and I think that's rather silly. I also want to point out that the fact that you couldn't potentially go to a straight wall rifle only is, I think that's a cop out by the DNR, because there's, I think, 8 other states that had shotgun zones that switched to straight ball rifle. And they, same thing, their instances of injuries and such has gone down. I feel like that's a good alternative for the safety crowd that thinks the rifles are going to be too dangerous. That's all I had.
Thank you.
My name's Brad Schnepp. I live in Alton Township. One of the things I think the DNR can control for the population, if they believe that there's a high population in areas, allow either more permits or, like the gentleman said, a longer season, but it has nothing to do with you guys. Same with landowners. So many landowners not allowing hunting on their land that you can't control. I don't think the DNR can control it neither. That's just an element that is, I believe, part of the problem why the population is higher. I don't know that the coyote population being reduced is affecting the deer population being higher or not, or it not for you guys to be regulating that. The line that was on your map that showed where the rifles are now in the northern part of the state had been established that way for many, many years. And mostly because of the lower population areas, they're more open areas compared to here for the safety of the distance of the projection of the slugs. Another thing I think that the DNR could regulate or be able to have more hunters if that's what they think they need to regulate the population by reducing their fees instead of increasing them, limiting people that can hunt, especially a larger family, or the kids aren't able to get in because of the fees are so high for, that haven't come down or won't come down and keep going up, limiting some people from being able to hunt or stopping them from being able to hunt. I don't believe that if you guys decided to restrict this or not, if you would be able to split it up to not allow rifles like in certain areas, it's all or none is my thought.
It is.
Is it too early? You're asking us for our opinion.
Mm-hmm.
What's yours?
As I said earlier, Brad, and I appreciate that question. I can say, I don't know that I have a settled opinion yet. I know what some of the data is telling me. I am hearing what you all are telling me. But I'm not gonna let our board answer that because it would be inappropriate. Because that would be a decision-making thing, and we haven't posted this to be a decision-making meeting. So we'll get in trouble if we do that.
Just asking.
Yep, and I appreciate that, but our open meeting laws will not allow us to do that because we haven't advertised this as a meeting where we make decisions. And so we can't make decisions here.
I was just asking an opinion.
But opinions are decisions for commissioners.
Potentially, not that you would be held to them,
Well,
based on what you've already, from his data and everything else that you've already heard.
and I appreciate that.
What I could say is my opinions have went back and forth, that I haven't made a final decision, but when it first came out, I was very skeptical, but as I get information and talk to people, I'm more comfortable with it. But yeah, I haven't made a decision, and it's kind of went up and down.
Would how other surrounding counties decide help make your decision? If you were the only one in an area that decided to do nothing, or you were the only one in the area that decided to limit it, would that sway you if they had their decisions made before that, before you made yours?
We have been exploring that, and here's 2.5 pages of counties in Minnesota and some of the actions they're taking. And
That
they're
have
all
already
over the
decided.
map.
They have some already decided.
Some have, some have not. Some are doing the same thing we're doing here. This all started with Olmsted pushing back and saying, we don't want it. And now they're gonna follow the statute. And I kind of went, what the heck, Olmsted?
Well,
So
Sorry, Madam Chair, I ask this question every other day. So there's not very many county administrators in the state, which is helpful for conversations like this because every single person has been waiting for everybody else to make a decision, as you've probably heard. So it's a perfectly valid thing to pose. Clay County, I was just talking to Stephen Larson, who's the county administrator of Clay County. They were trying to do exactly what you were describing there, using County Road 9 as kind of this dividing point in Clay County, north and south, for rifles versus shotgun. And the DNR is just kind of pushed back on all of that. So there's been a lot of votes that are 3-2 or 2-3. And there's been a more and more recently, you're seeing that it just kind of says, we'll be following statute, which is essentially a non-decision. You're just not taking it up because there's just such a wide array of opinion on it and an inflexible approach. It was just my terminology. It was just kind of dumped onto the counties by the legislature in a way that said, you figure it out. So it's great. We have the option.
Yeah.
Right. But it's also been thrust upon 87 different decision makers in the process that will inevitably create discontinuity between county lines.
well, it wouldn't be 87. It's just the ones that are currently
Fair
not.
point. Thank you. Yeah.
And those that say we'll be following statute means that they're gonna be allowing it.
Yes. Yeah, correct.
Okay, thank you.
thank you. Next.
Randy Peterson, I live in Waseca, Township. I seen that list up there. It says, we'll be following statute, we'll be doing this, we'll be doing that, Maybe you guys should step up to the plate and make a decision, then the counties around us will have something to go by. That thought ever crossed your mind?
Yes, it did. And we do have this on a board agenda for later in February. But we did want to allow time for public input before we did that.
Yeah, I know there's 3 more counties that's coming up in, I think the 17th of February or something. I heard some date, I don't know exactly what it is, but I think one county opted out already up north. I heard. Well, I talked to the guy, I talked to the DNR, the Capitol guy up there. They said they hope everybody follows the statute. Because that's, they're paid to enforce the laws of the state of Minnesota. And this is a law in the state of Minnesota. They don't want to have to be. And you said, well, I talked to you that one night, and you said something about boundaries. We've had a boundary since 1942, D, and seemed like we got along with it. If we have a boundary in 2026, we're gonna have to live with it. And you said they're actually, if you make a shotgun, they're gonna enforce it. You have to request them to enforce it. They're not just gonna do it on their own. That's what the guy at the Capitol told me. It's not automatic that if you say, we're gonna be a shotgun company, that they're gonna enforce it. You have to request them to enforce it. And it's not gonna be only them that has to enforce it. It's gonna be all law enforcement's gonna have to enforce it. And someone said too that this could end up in a court easily. If somebody in a shotgun county uses a rifle, they say, hey, the state law says I can use this. Is your ordinance gonna hold up? It probably will, but there's somebody that's got money who's gonna challenge it, you know? But, I mean, I'm in favor of leaving it the rifle zone. You know that. I've talked to, I think, about every one of you, or not close to it, but I've been working for 5 years with all the senators trying to get this passed. I started with Brzezowski, and about 5 years ago, I think it's when it started. And they went to gotten a real match 5 years ago at the end of the session, it would have passed the first year. And then it wouldn't have been, you'd have been out of it. It would have been statewide.
And yet here we are.
Well, I guess, and like I said, the coyote, someone else said the coyote hunters too, they're out there ripping around. And someone said coyote population. Well, there's no way to control coyote population because they populate their own. The more you take, the more they produce. It's a proven fact. The more puppies they'll have. If you shoot 20 out of a section, they'll have 20 babies to fill them back in. It's just what they do. They're smart animals. And I'm sure they pluck a few fawns too, but the deer population where I live, by Otisco, north and east, it's heavy. I mean, I could just well disc my headlands down in a cornfield a lot of years because there's nothing. Doug, you probably get a lot of it too. Brian probably gets some, but and this would be a way efficient, you know. And I guess I was surprised by that data on them slugs going further than a rifle bullet's gonna. I guess it probably makes sense. You think about it, but I just read an article in Outdoor News there, 200-yard slug guns.
Easy.
You know, what are we gonna, we ain't not gonna hurt any safety or, you know, the same thing if they can shoot that far with them. Muzzle loaders are getting, you know, they're not black powder anymore. They're basically a rifle. So that's all I got to say. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Glenn Carlson with a follow-up question for the commissioners. Based on your decision that you make at some point in time, will that decision be published in the regulations so that counties know what is in statutes or more restrictive? Do you have that guidance coming from the state that you have to input and knowing that it will it or not be published?
The original information that we got was that we would need to make a decision by March 1st. And more recent information that we have received would say we have to have a decision made by May 5th. Right now, we have a plan to have this issue on our meeting agenda at our next board meeting in February
For decision.
for a decision from us.
Thank you.
Oh, or either a decision or a lack of decision, because a decision would be to institute an ordinance, and that's got its own process.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah, so.
But no decision is a decision.
I just wanted to clarify that point too. So then the commissioners scheduled a public hearing at staff request this last Tuesday as a placeholder. That's all it was a placeholder, because even at that time, our assumption was by March 1st, we have to tell the DNR one way or the other. So if the public hearing, by law, we have to schedule a public hearing at least 10 days before it's held and notify. So we scheduled it on February 3rd with the anticipation of holding it, if needed, on the 17th. So that in and of itself, if you have seen that or do see that, It's not a guarantee that there is an ordinance being implemented at all. It is simply and now obviously we know we could extend that date a month or two, as some counties undoubtedly will, because they don't have to make the decision yet, so they'll kick it down the road a little bit. But just want to clarify
Thank you for
that, because
clarifying that.
you absolutely will see on the agenda for the 17th, when it's published, a placeholder on the agenda for a public hearing and or a discussion surrounding implementing an ordinance. That in and of itself is not a guarantee that there's an ordinance coming. So just want to clarify that.
That would be that would be the time when the board actually talks about whether we want to do that or not.
Right.
That would be another chance for input, but one of the reasons we did this tonight is because we know that we meet at 9:30 on Tuesday mornings. And more people can come at 5 o'clock on an evening, and we wanted to make this as convenient as possible for people to get input. So, Brad, what
Thank
else
you.
you got?
Thank you for that, to do that instead of limiting it to working hours for most.
Yeah.
A question I had is, if regardless of what way you guys would decide to go, either no decision or making the ordinance, is that forever, or that have to be revisited in a year? You're like, we made the wrong decision. Oh, no.
Ordinances can always change. That's ordinances get instituted at the will of the board, and they can be changed. There's a process to it, and it takes time.
But that deadline that the DNR has given you for their printing of that book was my understanding why that would mean you're probably locked in for the year until a year from now or whenever the next printing would be. Is that correct?
And correct me if I'm wrong. Our understanding is if you want it in the book, and this is, I would imagine, is particularly for counties who decide to do an ordinance. If you want it in the book, they need it by May 5th for the book to be right. Otherwise, they're going to publish this as if it's allowed in all counties, because it is allowed in all counties until you do an ordinance. If you do an ordinance after they publish, well, you've got an ordinance, but they don't have that in the book. So you're going to have to do a lot of public education for people that are in your county to help them know that there's an ordinance there.
And tougher to enforce then too.
Which is one of the reasons why we don't want to kick this too far down the road. We want to try to figure things out.
So that is what I heard relative to what Randy's comment was. We still have to ask for the enforcement to be done.
Mhm.
And the implication of that statement was, if you don't let us know, if it's published wrong in our book because you didn't tell us, don't ask us to enforce it that way. That year. So in practical terms, it's year by year. In realistic terms, the county board can implement the ordinance anytime or redact it. It just has to be done through a public hearing process legally, which is again why that placeholder is on the 17th, because by law, a commission can't implement an ordinance without first holding a public hearing, getting comments, which this is not it. This is input, and it's helpful, but it's not the statutorily required public hearing that would be.
Okay, thank you.
Other comments?
My name's Kevin Lacka. I live in town. I hunt south town, north of town. My biggest thing, I'd go back to like what Darren Kruger said. I personally, if you're gonna go off of data, I would wait, see what other counties, if they change it to rifle, what the data comes in, and I'd leave it shotgun. I know some people talk about coyote hunting. I look at the numbers of people that coyote hunt are minimal compared to how many people hunt on the 2 weekends of deer season. So in my opinion, I would just like to see what some of the other counties do first. And then, because if you can change it, I think it'd be easier to stay shotgun, wait and see, like if Steele County went to rifle, what numbers come in, how it went, and then go from there. It's just how I feel on it.
Thank you, sir. Other comments? I'm gonna ask just a couple more times, because we do want to give everybody a chance who's got a thought on this. But I'm also not gonna keep you here all night, and we've got other meetings tonight that have to use this space, so I want to be, we got time, but we don't have all night. So if you got something to say, now's the time to come and say it, sir.
Try me out.
You know,
Got a big pry bar, you said come talk.
that, exactly.
Todd Stencil lives Wilton Township. I agree with almost everything you said. I think on the reverse of that, instead of saying, let's put an ordinance in and try it for a year, how about we do it reverse? Let's just accept the state statute for a year. And then if it isn't working, put your ordinance in next year or the following year. Because I would assume we could do this annually instead of doing an ordinance now with all the extra regulation, red tape, meetings. Let's just let the statute serve itself, see what happens, and you can address it next year or the following year. That makes a lot of sense to me, but thank you.
Thank you.
John Underwood, Waseca Township. I just want to make one comment to everybody here. Tuesday, I was up at Almonds, and I talked to a gentleman there that's been working in Almonds for probably 30, 40 years. And he asked me about it. We talked about it. And he said to me, after I gave him my opinion, he said, are you basing it off emotion or fear? Or are you basing your decision off of what all the input is into it? Did you do some research on it? I said, I've never done any research on it. But I just wanted that to, everybody here needs to think about that. Is it emotion? Is it fear? Or is it research you've done on that rifle versus a shotgun? I personally, whether you go to rifle, shotgun, I will hunt with a shotgun because I hunt in the sort of river bottom. My shots would be close. But just a thought. Thank you.
Thank you. And that's probably important to clarify too. The current statute of rifle does not preclude people from using shotguns. That is a choice individual hunters would make. It allows rifle.
Hi, sir. Don Larson here, Waseca. I hunt public land, so I don't know. I'm kind of torn. It's a safety issue. We have a lot of small properties around and rifles can reach from one side to the other. So I mean, we gotta kind of restrict people in certain areas, maybe, I don't know. But it'd be more ethical to shoot them with a rifle so you don't have as many wounded deer laying around. I mean, I haven't got a deer in a few years because they're getting a little too far. So a rifle would make it better, but I understand the small plots we got, that's the only issue that I got, is a safety issue. But yeah, more ethical, more dead deer. So that's what I got.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Other comments? I'll ask one more time.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, Mark Shatsky, Janesville Township. I would just like to say that I'm opposed to opening up to rifle for a couple of reasons. You know, in farm country, my main concern is the sport. I've hunted deer a lot of years, hunted with shotgun, hunted with bow. To me, hunting with the rifle in ag land where you can, you know, I got places on the farm where I can sit and I can basically potentially have a shot at any deer that walks out on 100 acres. And I could be making all sorts of noise, you know, if they're 300 yards away. And I could make it, you know, if I could make a shot with the rifle. And I'm concerned that that's starting to be, it's a question of, not a question of ethical, but sporting, and giving the deer a fair chance. And I I've heard the comments of making a more ethical shot, more accurate. I don't completely agree with that because I think people are gonna start making those longer shots. And as a hunter, I know things do not always go as you plan. Things get in the way. There's still going to be those wounded deer, and I'm not saying that's wrong. I think that's just a fact of hunting. So those are my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Any other comments, either online or from the room? Well, if we have no other comments, I just want to thank you all for coming and for participating either as a speaker or a listener. We have appreciated it very much. You have been able to see some of the information that we are getting in front of us. And I want you to know that we are listening and considering and trying to be wise about either making a decision or making no decision and allowing state statute to just stand. And we have left the possibility for that discussion. And we are paying attention to what our neighboring counties are thinking and doing. And at some point, this decision will be made one way or another, just so that you all know and we all know, and we can move on and see how it goes. But thank you for being here so much, and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.